going on? No Horsing Around family. Zach Boyd, Stephen Burton, back at it again. Guys, we got fireworks down, in Westfield. Obviously, we've seen the tweets surrounded by Jonathan Taylor, the contract negotiation situation. Thought it'd be a good opportunity for Stephen and I to hop on here together, kind of have a little bit of a good back and forth conversation and just get general thoughts and then include you guys in as well. As always, like, rate, review, share, and subscribe. Join this No Horsing Around family if you haven't already. And if you have, thankful to have you back again. Stephen, man, I mean, there's been, we'll get into it here in a second. We'll fire some of those tweets up for everybody to kind of read if they haven't had a chance to read it. Looks like there's some bad blood going on here, and I don't know if this is going to be resolved sooner rather than later.
Well, it's just so odd, right? Like, you trace it back, you go back to just yesterday. Irsay kind of haphazardly, like, we all love him anyway. He's going to do things like this, and we got to just accept that he does it. Yeah. Kind of fires off that tweet about, not renegotiating a CBA that was already agreed on for one position. You could say, Irsay's a smart guy, but that tweet didn't feel to me directed at Jonathan Taylor. I think it was directed, now hindsight, it sounds like it was directed right at his agent, potentially, or some of the other agents, because we do know that Irsay is very plugged in around the league. He's a very plugged in owner with other owners and how they feel. So he fired that one off, and then it's like just an avalanche that has come out since then, and it's been nothing good. And even trace back before that, we talked about it, JT on the pub list, which surprised everybody. So you got people saying, is he holding in, by not participating? And then it's just this avalanche of just what the hell's happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, so many dominoes to fall so quickly for me, Stephen. I mean, you have a Chris Ballard press conference. You circle back before that, Jim Irsay says Jonathan Taylor's doing great. He's healthy. He's ready to go. Chris Ballard says we're not through all of our physicals that we've done. I think everybody expected Jonathan Taylor to be out there because he did show up. Colts did snap that photo of him, showing up for day one. Lo and behold, that evening, he's on the PUP list, and it's just kind of a little bit of a mysterious thing. I never want to accuse a player of faking an injury. That's really, really hard for me to do. But at the same time, this guy's been healthy. It seems like he's recovered. He had a high ankle sprain, and high ankle sprains don't last for 6, 7, 8 months, Stephen. So maybe something else did happen in his own individual workouts. But that being said, Jim Irsay, as you alluded to, fired off that tweet. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to play devil's advocate on both sides. So you may think I'm talking out of both sides of my neck on this podcast, but I don't like the Jim Irsay tweet. And here's why. He has every right as an owner to tweet out whatever he wants to. And I know that Jim really wants to be a historian and have a great legacy as a steward in the NFL, like a great owner who's really trying to pioneer this new wave and as we, usher in this new era of football. Jim's really plugged into stuff like that. So I understand where he's coming from. That being said, when you have one of your star football players in the middle of a contract negotiation, it's just not a good look, even if you feel that way, even if you're angered. And my guess is, Stephen, behind closed doors, they had a conversation. Chris Ballard said they were going to have a conversation that day, and that conversation did not go well. Whenever they were all sitting down and having this talk, and I felt a little bit of it was Jim Irsay having a little bit of a venom towards it, and just letting the NFL know in general, but Colts Nation knowing that, hey, this running back thing, it could get murky. It really could. But that was his stance without really saying he had a stance on it. Didn't like the tweet, Stephen. I just didn't, man. I know it's a little bit long-winded here, but I didn't love that. Equally, though, didn't like Jonathan Taylor's agent's response. And now we can make that plural. Responses, as we've got several of them up there, as you guys can read through these. Ian Rappaport today, wanting that relationship to be fixed. His agent says, I doubt it. Incredibly unprofessional. If you want to go back to 2012 and you really want to dig on this guy, he's a little bit of a wild card. He said the owner for the Colts is an egomaniac. Polian took that sorry franchise and turned it around. There's bad blood, Stephen. I mean, there really is. I think there's just a lot of different things. He even has one that says, not sure why the Colts just don't trade him anyway. If they're not going to pay him, wasting his time and his value on his team, not positioned to compete after his contract anyways. Man, I mean, it's
well, and that's what blows my mind. Like what the one that you were just reading, those are his likes. Like, and this is, and you go back and the whole thing goes bad. The first one that kind of started the avalanche, the bad faith is not paying your top offensive player, right? Yeah. And then Irsay's not responding to any of this. We were joking right before we went to record. Irsay's like tweeting out stuff about training camp and fun videos, and he's at like golf tournaments and charities, and don't think, and here's the thing too, don't think that it's a coincidence that it's not money related for him. Like, it's not an inability to pay JT, right? Don't think it's a coincidence that it recently came out that he got offered $1.1 billion for the Jim Irsay collection. Like, that came out just a couple days ago. That's not a coincidence either. I don't think any of it is. But for me, looking at it, and someone brought this up, JT did change to this agent right before. This was to do this negotiation. And it is not like, I don't know any agent that negotiates. I've never seen this where you're negotiating in the space of Twitter, right? Yeah. Or X or whatever it's called. But you're negotiating in that space. Like, he's not helping Jonathan Taylor at all. And I did a little digging too. And I don't know. I was trying to find out what that 2012 one was. Like, who could he have been representing? I couldn't find something. I know that he represents Shaq Leonard. So there's a history there too. They would have had to negotiate with him for Shaq Leonard several years ago.
Well, he has an MMA background, actually. Like, that was where he started doing a lot of his deals, and then he's kind of gravitated over into more sporting ventures. Doesn't have any real marquee names other than Shaq Leonard and Jonathan Taylor. He's got a few others sprinkled through. We could probably find that list at a later date and time. But that being said, I mean, this is a guy who seems like he's not going to be very, very easy, to negotiate with. We've already worked out one deal with him, Stephen. So it does tell me that Chris Ballard was patient enough to go out there and work with him and get a deal done. Shaq Leonard kind of did the same thing. When it was his negotiation, he was, he's a little bit injured. He's a little bit nicked up. Next thing you know, 2 or 3 days later, he's good to go and he's ready to come back out after he signs that nice, almost $100 million contract. So maybe this is a little bit more of a, let's push this in the direction. Let's kind of take a page out of our book that we did last time with Shaq and see if we can't get some steam to this. But I think at this point, it's become a little bit personal. And when you're Chris Ballard and a player that you're trying to sign to a long-term deal, his agent is now taking personal shots at the owner of your football franchise and your boss. You start thinking a little bit differently about, hey, do I really want to work with this guy? Like, do I really even if we could make a deal come through, do I even want to make a deal with this guy? Do I ever want to have any more dealings with him at all, period? Very fascinating, Stephen. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's just, even going back to him, for me, the whole thing is I don't understand the lack of professionalism from the agent. I mean, we've heard people come out and say that Drew Rosenhaus is a notorious shark when it comes to an agent. He's renowned. I don't see him doing this kind of stuff where you're calling these things out. He's very boastful, but just even down to the liking, like, get him to Miami. Let's see the mock-ups of the human jerseys. Why don't they trade? Like, he's liking these he's like a fanboy a little bit, right? And at the same time, he's not helping any of this. Jonathan Taylor's not going to come out and say anything. He's not, from my understanding, I know he wasn't available today. He wasn't available yesterday. I don't imagine they're going to make him available to talk to the
I don't
media.
think if you're on PUP, I don't think it has to be available. I
Well,
think
see,
it's a
that's good because I don't. The funny thing is, I saw this tweet from somebody I follow on Twitter, and they said this guy's managed to take one of the most beloved players on the Colts, soft spoken, everyone loves him, and without saying a word from JT, people are starting to get very upset. And
yeah.
it's the agent, not Taylor, and the agent is kind of sullying his reputation a little bit. I'm just dumbfounded. Now, I will say, I don't think he fires the guy. I don't foresee that happening. And then, like you said with Shaq Leonard, we did work it out. Shaq Leonard, but on the flip side too, Shaq Leonard became the highest paid linebacker in the league, and I don't think they want to do that for JT. I don't think they want to make him the highest paid running back.
Well, it's a little different. Like they don't have to, Steven. I mean, I think with Shaq had other suitors, right? Like he could have probably went somewhere because he was in the prime. I mean, this was the prime time maniac playing unbelievable football, punching out footballs, getting interceptions, just making plays all over the field. He had a lot more negotiating power. Jonathan Taylor doesn't have quite the negotiating leverage. And I just have a really hard time believing that he's not been offered a fair extension price. And maybe his agent's pushing back and saying they want this excessive, 15, 16, 17 million a year. It's just not going to happen, man. I mean, nobody's going to pay on that price. We can see it's kind of gridlocked. It's weird. You've got this stance by the running backs, but you've also got stance by 32 owners. Who's going to win? Generally speaking, when 32 owners make a decision on something, they don't bend at all. They just don't. And now one time there was a chink in the armor, and Todd Gurley ended up going ahead and getting that big contract, and every single owner despised, that franchise.
Another great Deshaun Watson. Haslam caved, gave him fully guaranteed, and every owner hates him for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely despises him for doing that. I mean, I'm with. I mean, I think it gets done eventually. It's just this weird, and it's going to kind of hang over. It's hanging over what should be and what still is a really exciting training camp for the Colts.
Two things before we get off here, too. I just want to get your thoughts on these two things. Can you really negotiate with a player who's hurt? Like, is that good practice? Like, if I'm Chris Ballard, I tell Jonathan Taylor and his agent, I'm not negotiating with a player who's hurt. I don't even know if he's healthy. I don't even know what his future looks like, because honestly, it's all BS. I don't think he's hurt. Now, I hate to say that, and then be that type of guy, but I don't feel like he's real. I feel like if he got paid his money, I think Jonathan Taylor would be out there tomorrow at practice, but he didn't. So it's a little bit of a a negotiating tactic or whatever. And then secondly, if you're Chris Ballard, why not just tell him, because you still have all the power and you don't have to do it. Why not tell his agent, well, go out there and find a better deal than we've offered. Call. We give you permission to call other teams. Go out there and get a 4 or 5 year deal for 15, 16, 14 million dollars a year. Let us know. We want to match it, we'll match it. If not, we'll work on something as far as trade compensation. And maybe we just don't do it at all because we don't have to. We have.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
We have every.
I was going to piggyback.
Just keep them, So there's a lot of avenues that they could take.
Well, and the third thing, like you were just saying too, like, and to piggyback a little bit, is also Ballard also has the option of saying, "Kick rocks." Like we're training camps here. I'm not going to negotiate during the season now, because they don't have to. A lot of people forget, and James Boyd, great friend of the show, has brought this up numerous times in his articles. Is he's under contract, and they can franchise tag him 2 times. He'll be very upset. I don't know what would happen, but they have him. They could, if they want him, they have him for 3 more years, including this year.
They have every ounce of
leverage. They don't have to do anything.
They have every ounce of leverage, and we're going to see at some point, and then another part of this, and just if you want to go really deep into the weeds, Chris Ballard could play this trump card and say, okay, you're injured. We're putting you on IR. You put him on IR.
Ooh.
You're not playing at the beginning of the season. So basically you're saying, well, I think there's a lot of things that he could do if he wanted to. I don't think Ballard's at that point yet. I think
I got
we're
one more
ramped
he
up
could
as
do too,
fans.
Zach.
I think, I think the management and all of that's ramped up, but I think Ballard's probably the most even on all of this. But there's things that he could do to really mess with this situation. He could say, fine, you don't get to, you don't even get to, you don't even get to play those first few games, and we'll let someone else come out there and have your spot. You can just
let Zach Moss run the ball a little bit. Well, you know, one thing he could do, and he could do, like we've seen GMs do it. There's another player that is there that he really likes that is needing a new contract as well, and that's Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah.
He could pay. He could be like, okay, I'm going to table you, Michael. Come on in here. Let's set yours up. Pay him. Now you're going to wait till the offseason. Because we've seen GMs do that. They've moved on. They pay someone else, and that guy's not getting paid for a little while. He could do that. I mean, and we all know, like, the thing with Ballard is Ballard holds his cards very close, but man, he is we can say a lot of things about him. And we always joke, we could say whether we think he should still be here or not. The dude is a shrewd negotiator.
Yeah.
He's not going to give if he doesn't have to. And this could end. I mean, I don't think it ends with him in another jersey, but I'm not as nearly as confident I think we did something in the offseason saying who signs first, him or Pittman, and we were all like, oh, it's Taylor. I'm not that confident anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to fire his agent if he wants to get it. Probably any progress done here before the season gets going. We'll just see. I mean, you never know. You may wake up, tomorrow morning, and then Jonathan Taylor all of a sudden has inked a new 4-year extension or something crazy out of left field. But guys, we just wanted to take an opportunity to kind of hash through this, talk about all the different scenarios. We want to know what you think. How do you feel about his agent? How do you feel about Jonathan Taylor? How do you feel about Jim Irsay's comments? How do you feel about the way that Chris Ballard's handling this? Every single one of those things are all kind of fascinating. And as we go through this, I'm sure there's more to come, but totally, totally locked into this situation. But besides that, we actually have real football to talk about. So we're going to be covering that. We've tried our very best to put something out every single day. We'll continue doing that as training camp rolls along, hit you with some highlights, live streams, checking in daily. And as always, we want to thank you guys so much. I guess, Steven, you sent us out like you always do, man. And we'll find out down the road what happens with this Jonathan Taylor situation.
Hey, and remember, if you want to place a bet on if he's with the Colts or not, you can always jump over to WagerWire, which is one of our amazing sponsors. Always give the plug, right? Like, you jump over there, you can bet maybe the future odds aren't on the Colts, and you can take a bet on him going somewhere else. But yeah, like Zach said, thank you guys so much. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Go over. Hey, if you've not yet too, we're over on Threads. Go over, follow us on Threads. You can follow. I think it's the No Horsing Around _podcast. You can follow myself and Zach are both over there too. So everything gets dropped everywhere so you guys can find it. But as always, we end the thing the same way we always do. I love you. I know Zach loves you. I'm still pretty sure JT loves us all. We're out.